to you about taking responsibility, which is not an easy thing to do. And sometimes we don't even know or realize that we are, in fact, blaming other people or other events in our lives, past and present, for the way our life is. And I want to give you an example because that's going to probably make a little bit more sense if I do. So I grew up in foster care since I was 2 years old. Um, been abused, have gone through a whole bunch of stuff, and then emancipated more or less when I was 15, 16 years old. But I couldn't figure out how to get a hold of my life. I couldn't work because I was dealing with some arthritis. I became a single parent and was literally spiraling down a similar path like my mother. And it wasn't until years later that I realized I was blaming them, my mother and my father and the foster family and the group home social workers. Like I was blaming everybody else for how shitty my life is. I was always broke. I was always frustrated. I was angry. I just couldn't freaking function in this world where I was just miserable and everybody was out to get me. Until sort of like a aha rock bottom kind of moment, I realized that I'm responsible for everything in my life in the present moment. And yes, there were moments that I was responsible for in the past, but I just couldn't see them. You know, a 13-year-old can't always understand their action and how that impacts them in the future or other people. And I had to learn to give myself some love, some compassion, and even forgive myself for my own behavior. It Forgiveness is always understood that we're supposed to forgive the other people, and that's not always the case. But when we can forgive ourselves for some of the decisions we've made and acknowledge that in each moment we have done the best that we could with what we knew, it helps take off the burden. It helps take off a little bit of the guilt and the shame. Okay? So, taking responsibility. If you're having a situation where you may have overreacted just a little bit, take a good look and see what the root of that is. I'm a huge fan of journaling, so I would encourage you to write it out. But that self-awareness will help you acknowledge, A, where does this behavior come from? Where do the thoughts come from? But it will help you become more aware so that if in the future a similar scenario happens, you can now own it. You can take responsibility. You can take a step back and recognize that you're responsible for the decisions, the behavior, and the words that you say, which is really, really, really difficult to do. But the more self aware you are about some of the things you might be projecting onto other people, the easier you can change your own behavior, change your own thinking. And that can really change the shift in your life and how you look at life. When I started taking responsibility for my behavior, I became a person who was more productive. I got more stuff done. I got clear on who I was. I got clear on what I wanted to achieve. It just kind of unfolded into all these different areas of my life that I didn't realize I was just being a shit about. Excuse me. Um, so yeah, that self awareness and taking responsibility, and know that you own that and you can't blame other people for um, different situations. That's really, really tough. I used to work in retail and do the night shift, and I freaking hated it. It was freaking awful. And I went to college. Now, I don't actually work in the field that I studied for, which is pretty much accurate for all of my degrees, but that's funny. And for time for another story. But the thing is, I wanted my life to be different, and it was my job, it is my responsibility to take action on being responsible for that. If you want your life to be different, you have to be accountable to yourself and take that responsibility and do the work required to create the change that you want.